Let's look at a book that I got from one of my friends. Ken gave me this book some years ago. It's from the mid-90s, and it has to do with different ways of doing animation. And it's called Animation, the Encyclopedia of Animation Techniques by Richard Taylor, giving you lots of ideas for different ways to do animation. Just on the cover alone, model animation, cell animation, sand, computer, how to do characters, make sets, make puppets, do storyboards, do cutouts for animation, drawing directly on the film, how to make backgrounds, and mixed media, combining everything. So let's take a look inside and see what we have here. A table of contents, how to come up with concepts, storyboards, scripts. That part I don't like. It says storyboards, then it says script and treatment. It should say script and treatment and then storyboard. You always start with the script first. And then different ways of doing drawn animation, different kinds of puppet animation models, doing your dialogue and music, timing, synchronization, what kind of themes for your stories, which I thought should have gone here. A really good book. There's from a film called A Close Shave by Nick Park when he was at Aardman Animation. The Wallace and Gromit guys. And then there's the usual, the short history of animation. And this one is more international and takes in a lot of different types of animation. Then there's a breakdown of how all the steps needed to make a hand-drawn animated film, a computer animated film, a model animated film, puppets, stop motion. Coming up with concepts, structure, and then storyboards, making simple storyboards, which are basically for you, making your own film. So if you want to be an independent animator, this is the type of book that you would look for. And here's how to do your script. And then it goes into hand-drawn animation and the tools and equipment you need to do it. Field guide, which would have field guides like this that work with this. This gives you coordinates. This gives you a window as to what's going to actually be on screen. Now, since this is from 30 years ago, all of the aspect ratios are 3:4, and it's almost a square in your field, but nowadays is widescreen, so there's all new field guide sets that you have to get, or you can download. So here we see a simple light box with a peg bar on it, separate peg bars, kind of markers you need if you're going to draw on cell, paints for painting characters and backgrounds, color pencils, eraser, pencils, and how these cameras are made, how they're set up, what they do, different parts. This is a semi-pro camera setup here, how they work, gears and levers on them. On a camera setup, the bars move side to side. There's a piece of glass that comes down on top of the art to keep it flat. There's lights on the side at an angle so that it doesn't reflect directly up. If you had your light here, it would reflect directly up into the camera. You see the gears for turning, for moving the bars left to right, east, west, actually. The entire bed can move north-south a bit. The camera goes up and down. It can get pretty complex when you're doing camera stuff. And here's a chapter on characterization, how to make different kinds of characters. Here's 3 different styles. Animal Farm back in the 40s, done in Britain. Tom and Jerry, although that looks like a newer version of them. And The Simpsons. This is the publicity shot that was made back in 89 or 90. Here we see a simplistic model sheet. And you can become much more elaborate than any of this when you're doing your project. So keep that in mind. Here's some simple animation done for Animal Farm where Napoleon, I think, turns his head. And he starts up and goes down as he turns. It comes up close to camera. You should be able to see it on YouTube. It's a very nicely done film. This, I'm not sure what this was for. It says it's When I Grow Up, I Want to Be a Tiger by Anne Vranbalt. And these look like color pencil drawings, probably on paper. And you see the drawings in order as the tiger roars. Here's something for moving an object across screen, figuring out the timing for it, figuring out somebody kicking a soccer ball. Lots of stuff in here. This is just the hand-drawn animation stuff. Exposure sheet. Layout, which is part of the process I really like. Grand Slam for Cadbury Caramel. And there's that bird. It looks just like the bird in the Fruit Loops commercial. So here we see a pan background, and it's on the camera stand. All these wheels here turn the peg bars. The bottom peg bars, top peg bars, auxiliary peg bars. And one of these will move this entire bed north or south just a bit. Here's the camera looking down on the entire scene. And that's color version of this, which is this character running across here. And all the writing down the bottom that is needed for the various departments. So this is a really good book. Background painting, whatever medium you want to use for backgrounds. Multi-plane camera setup. Cells, exposure sheets. Here's somebody drawing right on paper using crayons. Oh, China markers. And color pencils. You can get frosted cells and do your painting and drawing on frosted cells, which has a certain tooth to it. So it'll hold pencil, graphite, or color pencils. Continuity. Making sure that your pictures flow from one scene to the other. Now we get into other types of animation. Cutouts. You make your puppet and hold it together somehow. Sometimes you use thread, sometimes a tiny, tiny piece of metal. So lots of different techniques in here. Drawing directly on film, I've done one of those, where you get a strip of film and you put color on it and you can scratch off some of the color, or you can get the blank film and just draw on each frame. You get a sequence, you get a little pin board. These pins go through the sprocket holes in the side of the film and hold it steady as you draw, and you can see through. A little light there. Mixed media, putting different types of media onto your cells or paper. Drawing with sand on glass. There's so many different ways to go. Computer animation. Here we see a breakdown of a character and all the nodes and modules for making your puppets in a computer program. CG, and this is how CG pieces are put together for the character. This is what it looks like with the forms on the outside, but inside are all of these points that can be manipulated this way, that way, up, down, and that's how CG characters are moved. This is for when you're doing your puppets, model animation. You build a puppet, build a set, and then start doing your stop motion, making your puppet. Usually metal skeleton inside. It's a fascinating thing. If you ever see the movies King Kong or Mighty Joe Young or any of the Ray Harryhausen movies, this is how they're done. Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. This is a simplistic way of doing it with clay and balsa wood and wire armature. Put it all together and it becomes this creature here. And then you bend it one frame at a time as you shoot video of it. Here's a more complicated one with all metal skeleton. And then you cover it with cloth so we don't see the metal part, and you add hands and feet to it. Here he's added the feet, the shoes. And every one of these joints is where it bends. So you bend it a little bit at a time for each frame you shoot. This is how to make it move. So there's so many different ways you can go to make animation. It's a fascinating thing to get into. And I would say the most important thing, though, is making your statement or story or joke first, and then figuring out what kind of animation do you want to do it with. In other words, don't start with something like a puppet and say, well, what kind of story can I make for this? Have your story first and say, what kind of puppet can I make that'll tell the story the best way? Is it going to be a funny story, a dramatic story, happy or sad? So you can find books like this now. Like I said, this book is 30 some years old, but there are books like this out there that you can get so that you can get an introduction to different kinds of animation. So having shown you this book, hope you can find one like it or this one in itself and start on your film. Until next time, keep drawing.